Hola a todos, buenas noches. Hoy es martes 16 de abril de 2024. Son las 7 de la noche en Colombia. Yo soy Mike y les doy la bienvenida a nuestro día 10, al día 10 de nuestro curso básico de español. Charlemos pues, un curso enfocado en conversación, español de conversación. Hi everybody, good evening. I'm sorry. Hi everybody. Hi everybody, good evening. Today is Tuesday, April 16th, 7 p.m. in Colombia right now. I'm Mike and I bid you welcome to day 10 in our basic Spanish course. Charlemos pues, let's talk. Basic course focused on conversational Spanish. For the past 10 weeks, we've been practicing, studying, learning. Right now it's 7 p.m. No, we do not have daily daylight time, the daylight savings time here in Colombia. We don't have that. Um, you do in the United States. I know there are certain zones in Europe. It's gonna be pretty soon too. They have changes. That happens twice a year. And right now, let's say if you live in the East Coast, you are 1 hour ahead of us, right? So, give me a second. Just a second. Okay. So, this course for the past 10 weeks, we've been studying, practicing, learning stuff regarding conversational Spanish. So, I want to thank each and every one of you, the ones who are right now here to live with us, Osen Quebec. Thank you very much for being here and being part of the chat. Also, all of you, the ones who are right now here with us tonight live, and also to those who are watching this video later, because this is part of a playlist that you can find on our as part of the contents, the channel contents. It's a playlist called Charlemos Pues. We have all of our classes there. And also I want to especially thank the members of the channel. We do have a membership program. Thank you for being part of the membership program and for supporting the channel. We really appreciate that. So having said that, as I said before, we've been practicing learning stuff that can help us talk. The past class, we've been practicing some exercises, building sentences, affirmative, negative, and interrogative sentences, basic sentences, but nonetheless useful sentences. I hope you've been doing that. You've been practicing that because this is part of how we improve our skills. When it comes to proficiency, language proficiency, we need to master, well, not master, but at least we need to be able to be good at two basic fields of the communication. That would be the output and the input. The input being reading and listening, right? Being reading, the easiest part of the input, and listening, the most difficult part, because it's on the go. While for reading you can stop, check, analyze and stuff. When you're listening to somebody, it's a little bit harder. And hey, throat puncher, thank you for being here. It's good to have you here. Gracias por estar aquí. Y gracias a las personas que van llegando a la clase en vivo. And the input part, the output part is writing and speaking. Writing is easier because you can stop, think, and blah, blah, blah. But speaking is a lot harder. Those exercises that we have been doing for the past few weeks are focused on your output, how you're going to say and write things in order to be able to convey information. And later we can try and work in different aspects, like ask. Well, we already have learned how to tell and ask for the time in Spanish, but also personal introductions, things like asking for prices, going to the store, asking and giving directions, stuff like that. So that's the idea. But that's why it is important. It is very important to work on the output skills. So tonight we're going to talk about verbs. I'm trying not to do a lot of grammar and concepts and stuff in these classes, because I have videos in which I teach that. I teach the verb conjugation. I teach how to work with the pronouns, why we skip the pronouns, stuff like that. And I'll be working on more videos on a weekly basis. But tonight I want to go with something that is very important when learning Spanish, because it works slightly different than it does in English. And it is the great. Yo también, dice Throat Puncher. So this is something related the verbs. There's a lot of situations in which one subject is conjugating more than one verb. One subject. In a single sentence, I can have different verbs, and I can have different subjects doing those actions. Let's say Juan reads and Mike teaches. Juan reads a class that you are. Juan reads a book that you borrowed, or that he borrowed from you. He's reading a book while you're making dinner. Things like that. Every single subject is doing one action, but there are certain sentences in which the same subject is performing several actions at the same time. Let's say, I need to go. You see how in this sentence I am conjugating two verbs for the same subject. I say, I need to go. I love playing guitar. I have to study more. You see how am I using different verbs for the same subject? And this is a tricky part, because in Spanish it's pretty much easy, but there are differences in English. And because sometimes, or most of the times, when we are trying to make sentences, to build sentences, to speak or to write things in Spanish or in another language, we have the tendency of translating directly from whatever is our language. And that's tricky, because it doesn't work the same thing in both languages the whole time, being this one of those. So in English, when it comes to conjugating two verbs with the same subject, we have three basic cases. Verbs that the second verb has to go in the infinitive form. Being the case, let's say the verb to need. I say, I need to run more. I need to eat healthier. And it doesn't matter. It's regardless the tense in which I'm conjugating the verb to need. See, I can say, I needed to pay the rent. You will need to visit the doctor. They have needed to run for catching the bus. Things like that. I'm just trying to say some sentences, but just to show you that the verb to need is one of those verbs that when they use another verb for the same subject, the second verb goes in the infinitive form. There are some other verbs in which the second verb has to be in the gerund form, like now I am thinking, because I have verbs. Well, I have a list of verbs. Enjoy. If I use enjoy, I have to use the second verb in the gerund form. If I say I enjoy to play the guitar, that's going to sound weird. So I say I enjoy playing the guitar. I enjoy playing the guitar. So there are some verbs that most likely they are most likely to be conjugated with another verb, and this other verb goes in the gerund form. And there are some other verbs that can be either way, like love. I love to play the guitar. I love playing the guitar. So keeping this in mind, we need to know what's going to be the deal in Spanish. And let me show you something here. I have a list of those verbs. Just a second. Here. Okay, so I have verbs that they're frequently conjugated with another verb in the infinitive form, like want. I want to be your friend. He decided to go with her. Carlos promises to study more. I planned to travel tomorrow. I forgot to bring the keys. We hope to be here early, and so and so. These are verbs like that. Now, as you can see, the second verb is in the infinitive form. So when I do this in Spanish, I always go with the infinitive form for the second verb. Always. It doesn't matter what happens in English here. I always go with the infinitive form. So in this case, quiero ser tu amigo. That would be the way. Let me change this to alt caps. Quiero ser tu amigo. Quiero ser tu amigo. I skipped the subject here. Yo quiero ser tu amigo. It doesn't matter. Yo quiero ser tu amigo. Quiero ser tu amigo. But as you can see, the second verb goes in the infinitive form, because in Spanish, we have the infinitive form. Ar, er, ir. Verbs ending in ar, er, ir. In this case, to be, ser. Quiero ser tu amigo. As you can see, all of these sentences, regardless the tense and the verb, they go with the infinitive form, the second verb. Él decidió. Past. Decidió. Ir. Infinitive. Con ella. Él decidió ir con ella. Carlos promises to study more. Carlos promete estudiar más. To study more. I plan to travel tomorrow. Planeé. This is funny because in Spanish, I think I've never heard, maybe just a few people saying planeé, because we'll just say planeé. It tends to sound like that, planeé. Viajar mañana. You see? The second verb always ar, er, ir, the form ar, er, ir. In this case, how would it be? I forgot to bring the keys. Olvidé what? To bring, traer las llaves. Shoot. We hope to be early. Hope. Esperamos. To be. Estar aquí temprano. And it's estar because it's a temporary thing, not ser. Esperamos estar aquí temprano. I offer to assist you. Ofrecí ayudar you te. Ayudarte. This case has you, which would be the object pronoun. We agreed to sign the papers. Acordamos firmar los papeles. Ar, er, ir. See? I learned to fly. I learned how to fly. It doesn't matter. Both of them. Aprendo a volar. Aprendo a volar. Learn or learn how to. Aprendo a volar. In this case, to fly. To fly. Volar. Necesitar. To need. She needs to be here tomorrow. Ella necesita to be, estar aquí mañana. Now, we also have the verb to have when it's followed by another verb in the infinitive form. I have to eat more. Same thing. To eat would be comer. Yeah, comer. Tenemos que, we have to, tenemos que, this form, to have to, I have a video about this. You should watch it. I explain in full detail this verb when it's followed by another verb in the infinitive form. Tenemos que, tener que, have to, tener que, and to eat goes like comer. It's funny, comer más. It's funny because in this form we translate have as tener que and to eat in the infinitive form. Ask, pedir, same thing. Te pidió ir con ella. All the verbs are that follow there, they go with the infinitive form. Now, if we have verbs with the gerund form, this can be confusing because this usually translate as ando, endo, viajando, viajando. But we don't say disfrutamos viajando. We don't say that. We don't say that. We don't translate that. We say we disfrutamos viajar. So in this case, when there's a verb followed by another verb, and this verb is in the general form, is also translated with the infinitive form, viajar. So in this case, te importaría coming, venir conmigo. I guess, or I bet you have a question here. You say how we are translated this as importaría when this is importa. Because this is the way it works with this expression. It's like, would you mind? It's basically the same. Would you mind? Do you mind? Would you mind? ¿Te importa venir conmigo? ¿Te importaría venir conmigo? Imagine living in the United States. Same thing. Imagina vivir en los Estados Unidos. So we always translate this as ir. It doesn't matter if I have a gerund verb followed by a conjugated verb. I mean, conjugated verb followed by a gerund verb. It is translated as ir. And I have all these examples depending on the verbs, like this. Please avoid running out of gas. Por favor, evita. Conjugated. Quedarte. Running out of gas. Quedarte sin gas. Quedarte sin gasolina. Ir. Quedar. Quedarte sin gasolina. This is an interesting verb. Finish. We finished studying English. Terminamos de studying, estudiar inglés. Second verb, always translated ir. I miss going out with my friends. Extraño salir, going out. Not saliendo, salir, because it's a second verb. Con mis amigos. And also for those verbs who can be translated either way. So it doesn't matter, regardless this, it is always, the second verb is always translated as ir form, infinitive form. I love to skate. Me gusta patinar. Me gusta patinar. Me gusta pescar. Me gusta pescar. Now, with this, there's a tricky thing here, and is that here I can also translate this as a noun. Instead of this, I can say me gusta la pesca. Me gusta la pesca. Me gusta el patinaje. Me gusta, odio el trabajo. Sometimes, not always. But right now, just to avoid, I'll go further in detail with this in another video. But now, just to avoid mistakes, whenever we find a second verb with the same subject, the second verb, regardless is the infinitive or the gerund, in Spanish, we always translate the verb as the infinitive form. Always, always. So let me check the So Ozen Kebak says, aprendí cosas valiosas, gracias, qué bueno, muy bueno. Quiero hablar como nativo. Olvidé traer mis amigos esta noche. Don't worry, don't worry. Hola, Faith. Hey, Faith. So I'm gonna take a quick break here to check these messages because I need to switch screens to be able to check the messages on the chat window. Thank you for commenting, and I mean just to take a little break to talk a little thing about speaking as a native speaker in Spanish, of course. So yeah, it is good to have this goal of being able to speak like a native speaker, but it requires a lot of work and exposure to language. I've talked about this before, and you need to work on the output and the input. The input being listening and reading, and the output being writing and speaking. You need to work on that, and you need to be exposed to expose yourself to the language as much as you can. And yeah, we need some basic rules and structures and concepts in order to be able to understand, because we already have a linguistic software to say something here in our minds, which is in your case English, and we need to be able to understand the stuff that so we always try to translate everything, but the exposure will give us this ability to sound like a native speaker. Now, don't worry about your accent. Don't worry about that. You can have an accent and sound like a native speaker, unless you want to lose your accent, which is pointless unless you're gonna work at something that requires you to lose your accent. Don't worry about the accent. It's like in English. The idea of speaking like a native speaker is to be able to communicate effectively. That's the basic idea. To be able to understand, to fully understand what I'm being told, and to be able to produce information and communicate in an effective way. Meaning that speaking like a native. That's a good goal. So hopefully we're going to be able to do that. Eventually we're going to be able to do that. So let's go back to the verbs. Now, in English, these are not the only verbs that come with another verb for the same subject. We also have modal verbs in English. The modal verbs in English have interesting rules, because in English, a modal verb, we never conjugate a modal verb, meaning that we don't have tenses for the modal verbs. I can say that's a modal verb, can, but I cannot say to can. I need to can. No, I cannot say that. I will can. I cannot say that, because it's a modal verb. So modal verb is we never conjugate modal verbs in time. We don't have tenses for modal verbs. The second thing is the modal verb is the same for all of the subjects. In English, I can, you can, he can. I must, you must, he must, she must, it must. It's the same. Because modal verbs are not conjugated, right? And what's the other thing with the modal verbs? Same, never, you cannot conjugate the same. And the verb that follows the modal verb, it's most likely, there are some exceptions based on a couple modal verbs, but most likely they are in the base form, meaning that if the infinitive form of the verb is to be, The base form is be. So in the case of can, if I'm going to use, of course, because a modal verb gives the mode to the verb that follows for the same subject. If I say I can go, I'm not going to say I can to go like the other, or I can going. No, I don't say that. We don't say that. We just say I can go, the base form. So those are basically the rules for modal verbs in English. But when we try to translate that to Spanish, it might give us trouble. Being might, another modal verb, it might give us trouble. So what's the deal with the modal verbs, the English modal verbs in Spanish? Let's check a couple. Let's start with can. Poder. Can. Poder. The main thing is that in Spanish, we have tenses for poder. We can say, yo podré in the future. We can say, yo he podido. Present perfect. We can say, yo podía, the past. But in English, I cannot take can as a verb and do the same. In English, we have to use to be able to place in the future, instead of saying I will can, which is horrible and impossible, and that's a huge no. I can say I will be able to, right? I have been able to. I have been able to. I cannot say I have can, could, because it's impossible. So in Spanish, we have translations in different tenses for that. But the good thing is that for the verb can, for the modal verbs can, must, have to, and oughta, up to, the following verb goes in the infinitive form in Spanish. So if I have this, can, I can speak Spanish fluently. The second verb in Spanish goes in the infinitive form, ar, ir. Puedo hablar español con fluidez. With must, same thing. You must finish your homework before dinner. Debes terminar tu tarea antes de la cena. With have to, same thing. We have to wake up. This is what we just saw a few minutes ago. Tenemos que levantarnos temprano. With oughta, debería. You oughta exercise regularly to stay healthy. Deberías hacer ejercicio. Same thing. For these modal verbs, the second verb always goes with the infinitive form. Now let's check the conditional verbs, the modal verbs, which are could, should, would, and would. Well, would is the same, but I'm going to explain why I have two woods here, being the same. From the conditional point of view, could. From the conditional point of view, be careful. It's podría. 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 There's something wrong here. Let me check here. Oh, yeah. Oops, sorry. Give me just a second because I made a mistake here. Actually, I made pretty much the same anyway. So, could as a conditional modal verb is translated as podría. Podría. And the second verb always goes with the infinitive form. Él podría tocar el piano. He could play the piano if he had time, si tuviera tiempo. Él podría tocar, as you can see. Should is translated as debería. And the second verb always goes also as an infinitive form in Spanish. They should call their parents. Deberían llamar. No issues. And would can be a conditional verb or can be a verb for the past, for a regular past. So both ways are used in English with a base with a second verb in the base form in English. But in Spanish, would as a conditional verb changes the verb as the form haría. And I have also this in another video in which I go full in depth with the conjugation for the verbs in the conditional form. So in this case, the verb that goes with would, which is visit, right? Visit in Spanish is visitar. The root is visit, right? This is the verb. In this case, the would adds haría to the verb. In this case, visitaría. So this is different than the other verbs. And when I use would as a past form, I would always visit my grandparents on weekends when I was a kid. This is translated as solía, and the verb that goes with that is always in the infinitive form. Now, you may be asking, what about may, might, and shall? That's going to be subject of the next class because we ran out of time and we need to go and explain something called the subjunctive. And the subjunctive works differently in English than in Spanish. So, what we have learned tonight is when we have two verbs conjugated by the same subject, in Spanish, we most likely go with the infinitive form. Let me check something. ¿Me entiendes? Cuando yo mande mensajes y estoy feliz con eso. ¿Me entiendes? Cuando yo mande mensajes. I don't know what you really mean with that. Throat puncher. ¿Me entiendes? ¿Me entiendes? Cuando yo mande mensajes y estoy feliz con eso. I'm not sure exactly what you want to convey with that. It sounds a little weird in Spanish. I don't know if you mean you understand me when I send messages and I'm happy with that. I think you mean that, right? You understand me when I send messages. I'm happy with that, meaning you're happy with the fact of me understanding you when you send messages. If you mean that, the right way would be estoy feliz con eso, right? That part is okay. Me entiendas. Que me entiendas cuando mando mensajes. I would say that in Spanish, yeah. Que me entiendas, si me entiendes cuando mando mensajes, estoy feliz con eso. Me entiendes cuando mando mensajes. O que me entiendas cuando mande mensajes. This is, oh man, this is so interesting because Throat Puncher just opened Pandora's box. Because it's the subjunctive. Subjunctive, the subjunctive mood in Spanish is so freaking weird. It's so complicated. It's very, 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 very hard. It's not impossible, but it's tough because in English it's so easy. The subjunctive mood in English is, I love the subjunctive in English. I love it. In Spanish, it's so freaking complicated. Be this an example of that. Check it out. I can say I can say the same sentence in different ways. Check it out. I can say, si me entiendes, cuando yo mando mensajes, estoy feliz con eso. That's one way. You see? But check it out. Let's hold your horses, Throat Puncher. Hold your horses. Because in this course, we're going baby steps. towards speaking, basic Spanish speaking, right? Okay, those are baby steps. Good thing is that if you ask questions, I can try and answer your questions, but depending on the level of your question, I can give you some ideas, but I'm working on that on some other videos. And let's say I just said, because we're out of time right now, the remaining modal verbs, because they deal with the subjunctive mood, we'll go deep in that next class. But let's check this, because this is just real quick. You understand me when I send messages, and I'm happy with that. That's the sentence in English. It's a good sentence in English, right? That's the right way to say that in English. But in Spanish, as I told you, I can say that I'm just gonna say that in 3 different ways. Si me entiendes cuando yo mando mensajes, estoy feliz con eso, which is conditional 0. That would be conditional 0 in English. If you understand me when I send messages, I'm happy with that. That would be one way of saying that, right? And it's okay. Me entiendes cuando yo mando mensajes. Y estoy feliz con eso, which is the legal translation of you understand me when I send messages, and I'm happy with that. But check it out. When I send messages, cuando yo mando mensajes, you understand me entiendes cuando yo mando mensajes, y estoy feliz con eso. That's the literal translation, and there's no subjunctive mood in that sentence. Everything is simple present. Me entiendes cuando yo mando mensajes. You understand me when I send you messages. And I'm happy with that. That's cool. And that's another way of saying that. And the other way of saying that with the subjunctive mood is que me entiendas cuando yo mande mensajes me hace feliz. Estoy feliz con eso. That's another way. And that's the subjunctive mood. So Spanish is so rich and complex, just as its culture is. Every language pretty much reflects the complexity of its own culture. That's why I think, this is just a personal opinion, that's why I think Japanese is so simple in speaking, not in writing. Writing is difficult, but in speaking is simple. Spanish is so freaking complicated. English, not as complicated as Spanish, but we're gonna get there. So yeah, so let's go baby steps. Now you know that the easiest way to translate that is me entiendes cuando yo mando mensajes y estoy feliz con eso. That's the easiest way. No subjunctive mood at all, because the way you wrote it has a subjunctive mood in mande, cuando yo mande mensajes, and that makes the sentence a little bit weird and complicated. So okay, so that's it for tonight. I hope you understood what I tried to teach you tonight, which is whenever you find 2 verbs conjugated for the same subject, either verbs that go with the infinitive form, either verbs that go with a gerund form, or modal verbs, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, the ones that we just saw tonight, the second verb always goes with the ad form in Spanish. So don't worry about that. Okay, man, I'm here to help as much as I can. When I started this channel, my goal was, hey, let's try. I've been learning English for 40 years. I still sometimes struggle with it. I think I have a good level of proficiency with the English. I think not always, but I pretty much always think in English. I think in English a lot. There's a lot of sentences and ideas that to me make a lot more sense in English than in Spanish. And there's a lot of situations in which I'm speaking in Spanish and I can help thinking in English for some ideas and concepts, because I think this makes way more sense in English than in Spanish. But nonetheless, and I would like to be able to help English speakers to achieve certain level of fluency in Spanish, to be able to communicate the best way possible for them. So hopefully we're going to be able to do that through the different videos that I have on this channel. Hope you're being able to take advantage of that, to use that in your process of learning. And these live classes, hopefully more people like Throat Puncher here. Thank you very much for being a subscriber, and thank you very much for asking things, to be able to have this interaction and help a lot of people who might be in the same position as Throat Puncher is. So thank you very much for being here. I don't think you have more questions, because I don't see any other questions. So let's keep on learning. Thank you for being here tonight with us. Remember, this is so important for the channel, for me. If you like this video, please, you know what to do. Share with your friends, group, social media. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Click the bell button in order to get notifications, because we're posting videos on a steady basis, and that's gonna allow you to participate on the chat window through this, on the chat session through these live classes. So thank you very much for being here tonight with us. I love what I do. I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy sharing and teaching what are the things that I know, and I hope you are having fun as much as I am. So looking forward to seeing you in next classes. Disfruten mucho, estudien mucho. Es con mucho gusto, Throat Puncher. I love it. It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here too. Thank you for taking your precious time to be here too, learning. Looking forward. Nos vemos en la próxima clase. Que se diviertan, descansen. Bye. Estudien mucho. Chao.